What's up, guys? I'm Gary Cook, and this is Divas Dive. And today, we're talking Impact Rebellion. And this show is great for two reasons. One, awesome knockouts wrestling. Two, it proved me right in showing exactly how far behind the curve the WWE is when it comes to women's wrestling and their whole supposed women's revolution. So, take a seat, grab a drink, smack that like button, smash the subscribe button, and let's talk Impact Rebellion. So this pay-per-view, top to bottom, was a pretty great show for both the men and the women's matches. I enjoyed pretty much every match except for two of them, but neither of those two were one of the women's matches, so that is great. The first women's match we got was the Knockouts Championship match. We had Taya Valkyrie versus Jordynne Grace. Now, let's get the controversy out of the way first. There's a lot of people saying Jordynne Grace should have won because she had the undefeated streak going in and they wanted that to continue into her championship reign. I see that argument. I love Jordynne Grace. I would have popped huge if she won because the moment would have been exciting. But I don't think Jordynne Grace is fully ready to be the cornerstone of a company like Impact yet. In ring, she's phenomenal. On the mic, in the storytelling department outside of the ring, she still has a bit of work to do that isn't quite polished off yet. Now, a lot of people have been also comparing this to the Asuka Charlotte debacle that happened in the WWE, and I don't think it's anything like that. Yes, they both had a streak broken, but as soon as Asuka's streak ended, Charlotte Flair was out the door getting her breast enhancement surgery done, and there was no story, there was no payoff for it. It was just another notch in Charlotte's belt. And I don't feel like this is another notch in Taya's belt. I feel like Impact is going to handle this better. This entire pay-per-view is built around storytelling and developing stories and finishing stories and cashing in on the emotional investment that stories already were carrying. So I feel like if any company that's currently out there doing things is going to pull this off, it's going to be Impact, because this entire pay-per-view beginning to end was all about paying off on those stories and those emotional investments that people have put into the product and put into the stories and the characters. And I think losing story-wise and character development-wise is going to be better for Jordynne, because it's going to be something that Taya can hold over her head. It's going to be something that can be rubbed in and just bring out a different side of Jordynne than what we've seen. For the most part, Jordynne's always been the sidekick on Impact. In the stories with Allie, Jordynne was a sidekick. In the run up to this event, she was still kind of the sidekick. She helped Madison Rayne get a win over Taya Valkyrie. She helped Brian Cage when he was being double teamed. She was always the sidekick and never the focal point. The only time she was kind of the focal point was the last promo before the pay-per-view where they had their altercation in the gym. But really, there was no story for this match. There was no real build-up compared to a lot of the other matches had, where you really felt like Taya and Jordynne were on equal footing. I mean, in ring, yes, equal footing, but as far as presentation of the character of each of them go, Taya was leagues above where Jordynne's been presented on TV, and I don't think a simple swapping of the title would have lessened that gap a whole lot to suddenly make Jordynne the top woman in the company. In ring, she might be the top woman in the company, but I feel like this loss and the stories that can come out of the loss are going to be a whole lot better than what would have happened had she won. Now, let me start some controversy of my own. This match, better than the WrestleMania title match. Better than the history-making main event that WWE is so proud of. This put that match to shame. If you go back and watch WrestleMania 35, it was a brawl. It wasn't a wrestling match. It was a bunch of high spots strung together with a few submission holds mixed in for that were basically high spots of hitting people's signature moves and throwing people out of the ring, throwing people through tables. It was all devised to cover up the fact that Ronda Rousey can't wrestle. And it was all to cover up the fact that they had to have Ronda in this match, but they couldn't do a pure wrestling match. It was an okay match. I mean, even had the ending not been botched, it wouldn't have been a great match. It was just a good match. But good is as good as you can get when Ronda Rousey's in the ring with you. As good was where you peak. That is the plateau. She will never be better than good at this point in her career. Unless the year off she takes, she goes back and does a ton of relearning and learns to wrestle, she will never breach that good match caliber because she's not a great wrestler. She's not a great promo. She's not great at anything when it comes to wrestling. And this match, as far as in-ring work goes, was light years ahead of what that WrestleMania match was. There was brutal spots without the need of foreign objects to make them seem brutal. There was submission work. There was reversals. There was counters. There was storytelling. There was psychology of Taya Valkyrie knowing she wasn't the stronger woman in the match, so she has to work down Jordan's arm to break her down. There was joint manipulation by Taya to make it harder for Grace to hit the Grace driver and other moves. There was an entire psychology to this match that was abundantly lacking in the WrestleMania main event. If you want to see how a women's titles match should look, I would point to Taya Valkyrie versus Jordan Grace 10 out of 10 times if my choices were that and that WrestleMania main event. This was just a good wrestling match. There was story, there was physicality, and there was psychology. And it had everybody engaged because of those three things. There wasn't any need for extra hype because of a name involved. They got over because they were doing good wrestling in front of wrestling fans. And that is a big thing the women's division in WWE is lacking, is just good, solid wrestling matches. They get too caught up in the drama of Ronda Rousey and Charlotte and arrests and suspensions and everything else in the world that you can talk about. And they forget to put on good wrestling matches. So this was just a great wrestling match that had more emotion, more investment, and a better payoff than anything that WrestleMania match gave us. And on that same note, the match that came later in the night of Tessa versus Gail had all of that, but cranked up to 11. The two of them tore the house down. They built up a great story leading into this. They told an amazing story in the ring. It was completely brutal. Gail took a nasty bump off the side of the ring that sent her crashing to the outside from that elevated ramp they have that goes all the way to the ring. It was a phenomenal match. Gail Kim looked like she hadn't missed a step at all. Like she just stepped out of the ring yesterday and was back in today. You'd never know that she had been out of the ring for almost a year or over a year now. It was such a great match. They each knew their role in the match and they played it to perfection. Tessa was the hungry up and comer, the daughter of a legend. Tully was in attendance too, which just added to that. She was wanting to bank on her family name, prove that she deserved the legacy that she's inherited, and go out there and cement herself as the woman to beat in Impact Wrestling. And on the other side, you had Gail, who was the grizzled veteran, who has paid her dues, done her time, and was not going to be disrespected by the youth. That was going to go out there and show, hey, you're going to respect my generation. You're going to respect what I've done and what my peers have done. And I'm going to show you that we can hang with you, even though there's this gap in the times in which we were in our primes. And they played that to a T. And at the very end, Tessa tapped out Gail Kim, which was just a beautiful ending. And then at the end, Tessa got back in the ring. She had her kind of crazed look at first. Everybody thought she was going to attack Gail Kim. And then she extended her hands and the two embraced in the ring. And it was the perfect emotional ending to this emotional match that was just full of so many personal things going into it from the build up that there wasn't a better way to end it. I've seen some comments of people saying they didn't like that ending because of how personal the build up was. But if you look at the story as a complete picture, in going into this match, Tessa didn't respect Gail. Gail didn't respect Tessa. That respect and adoration for each other was earned through blood, sweat, and tears in the ring. They went in there. They had a killer match. They pushed each other to the brink. And then when they hit the brink, they slammed through that and went to hell and back together. They had a war in the ring that was more brutal than the hardcore match before them even looked. It was beautifully done, and you could tell that the respect was gained because of the sacrifices made in the match on both sides. And it was the perfect end to that match to top off the knockouts attractions for that night. And I understand why it went after the title match, because there was so much story and so much emotion built into that feud that there was no way Taya Valkyrie and Jordynne Grace were going to top that, just because of the emotional investment the crowd had in Gail Kim versus Tessa. Because, I mean, lines were drawn in the sand. You had your diehard Gail fans, you had your diehard Tessa fans, and it was like a clash of the titans. It was great. So that's my thoughts on both those matches. It was a great pay-per-view. The knockouts matches, hands down the best women's pay-per-view matches I've seen all year so far. Both those matches blew out anything the women did at WrestleMania, anything they did at Fastlane, Elimination Chamber, and probably anything they're going to do at Money in the Bank with how things are shaping up there. If you like women's wrestling and you haven't given Impact a shot, go watch these two matches. Go get the video on demand from Fight and watch them. They are amazing. Impact has, hands down, the most talented women's roster right now. And I understand that on paper, technically, the WWE probably has the better roster, but they're not allowed to shine. If you just look at what the WWE has produced and what Impact has produced, Impact is the premier women's wrestling right now of the bigger companies in the United States. And I don't see that. I mean, AEW is going to have to work hard to change that. They have the roster to do it, but we haven't seen enough yet to see if they can do it. Women of Honor has a long way to go to debunk that. I feel like Women of Honor will probably surpass WWE this year at the rate that they're improving. But right now, the Impact Knockouts, they have put their A game out there. And of kind of those big 3 or 4 technically that we have now that AEW's entering the picture, Impact is by far blowing the other women's divisions out of the water with their work ethic, with their matches, and what they're bringing to the table. I highly recommend it. Go out and watch Rebellion. These 2 matches alone are worth the price of entry, but the World Championship match was great. The 6-man scramble was great. The 6-man tag match was great. It was a very solid card, top to bottom. They are killing it right now in that Knockouts division. You should definitely check out Impact Friday nights on Twitch. Check out Rebellion. If you've seen it, let me know your thoughts. What did you think of Jordynne Grace losing? What did you think of Gail Kim losing? Where do you want to see Taya and Jordynne go from here? What do you think Tessa's next feud should be coming off of this huge win off of Gail? Let your thoughts be known in the comments. Let us know on Twitter. I'm excited to hear all about it. Again, I'm Gary Cook, and this has been a Divas Dive.